And we're live.
Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm your host, Keenan, to the Sales Top to Bottom podcast. I'm here with my lovely host, Becc Holland. Becc, what do you think about the sales influencer world? Think it's too many?
Do I think what? What was the
Think
specific?
it's too many?
Look,
putting her on the spot.
I get to pass one of these annually.
I mean, that's the route you want to go. That in itself is telling.
Okay.
Keenan, I was born at night, not last night, and I'm not going to take myself down.
I mean, like I said, sometimes not what you say.
That was
what you don't say.
I'm questioning our relationship at this point. I really am.
Good. Then that way, when you come to the answer, it'll be even stronger than it is.
Oh my goodness! 45 seconds of the Top to Bottom podcast is already canceled.
Yay or nay? Do you think it's going to be a yay or a nay?
It's going to be double thumbs up, yay. Becc, you can't quit me. Come on, Becc, you can't quit me. You know it. You can't quit me.
Oh, thank goodness. My job is secured. But anyways, we're going on to the first segment of this podcast, which is Email Teardown. This is the segment where Keenan and Becc tear down emails and messages that were sent over to them. Now on to the first one. The first email of today is the subject line is Keenan Thoughts. Hey, Keenan, just found your company when I was looking up for management consulting companies in the Colorado area. I know you get pitched a lot, so I want to ask your permission first to see if you're interested in seeing how we help businesses like yours boost their social media presence without spending a single dime on paid traffic. Would you like to learn more about this? Kind regards.
No.
Donna Hughes, business analyst at Volume 9. Well, we already heard an answer. Keenan, what are your thoughts on this?
No, I don't want to learn more about this. No, I don't. And here, first and foremost, all salespeople listening, nobody wants to be pitched. The mere fact that someone leaves an email with you must be pitched all the time implies you're about to pitch me. And if I don't know, look, I can't make this long. Stop pitching. Stop pitching. Number one, nobody wants to be pitched. Number two, if this person spent half a second doing any research on me under Keenan or under ASG, they would understand that we've got a pretty large social media presence. So coming at me with, do you want to improve it and save money? No, because I don't know how you would do that. Because I don't even believe you understand who you're talking to. That's like reaching out to LeBron and saying, would you like to be a better basketball player? Okay, I'm sure he would, but he thinks you think he's a high school kid and have no idea who you're talking to. So therefore, he doesn't believe he can bring any fucking value whatsoever. So this email, not only do I not want to respond to it, it highlights the fact that I don't even think you can do your job.
Becc, what do you think about this email?
I just think this email is just really blah.
She's been in Paris a while because now things are blah. Now things are blah.
I'm just like, there's nothing interesting. There's nothing that catches my attention. There's nothing that shows me that they're an advocate of mine. You know, like maybe this is just me getting blunt, because it's later now, but using a normal like pattern interrupt of like, oh, I know that you're busy, but I know that you get pitched a lot, but so I'm going to get to the point. I'm like, no, just get to the point and start talking about something that he doesn't know about his business that's going to hurt him. That's all you have to do. And I don't know how many times or different ways, like I can honestly say that, but it's like, if you don't know something that they don't know, then I don't know why I would want to spend any time with you. And so I just see message after message after message after message. It starts to look like, same bread, same bread, same bread, same bread. And it's like, when are people going to learn that the entire sales industry has to change? It has to change until you have some level of expertise. So it's like, it's every single email that I've seen recently is just a combination of a whole bunch of sales tactics, permission-based openers, or, I know you're busy, but, or I'll get right to the point, or they'll put a GIF, or they'll put some kind of meme, or they'll put some, like go Bears, happy Tuesday, hope you and your kids are safe during these uncertain times, or like, some kind of like false bonding rapport thing. And then they're like, we help blank do blank. And it's like, I don't know how many times that people are going to sell without thinking at all about how they like to buy. When I'm buying, the only person that I want around me is someone who has an expertise that I don't have. And how you can prove that is by finding something that they do not know. So if you had talked anything about how he's currently running his paid ads today, his social media presence today, something that he didn't know that was hurting him, like, did you know that I've seen over the last, 2 months that you've been posting on, at 9 a.m., which actually statistics will show you that that's going to be the worst time to gain traffic, 4 p.m. or later, like some kind of statistic to highlight that he has a problem that he didn't know existed, a root cause that he didn't know about, like present and find information that he doesn't know. If he was about to step into oncoming traffic and I saw it and then I pulled him back and I said, hey, watch out, a car's about to hit you. Like, I don't need a pattern interrupt. I don't need to build rapport with him to do that. I just need to grab him and say, hey, a car is about to hit you. So I'm like, just do that and you'll be fine.
Wow.
My day has been made complete. Do you know why?
Why so?
Because Becc is using my colloquialisms and metaphors now. They just flow out of her mouth. It just makes me the whole, if you grab someone from stepping in the street, thank you, Becc. I feel validated.
It's just because I've stepped into so many streets recently where I almost got hit and run over.
All right.
Oh my goodness. If Keenan and Becc assimilated into one person, I wonder.
I think we already have. I think we switched.
Well, with that, we are going to the second segment of this podcast, which is
Sales Mythology.
This is the segment where Becc and Keenan demystify common myths in the sales industry. So the first myth of today is that all sales methodologies basically cover the same thing.
Whoa. Didn't see that one coming.
Becc, what are your thoughts?
Like, now I've been learning who's going to go first by looking at the broadcast of who's
Oh, she's catching on to my secrets.
So generally speaking, I do think a lot of sales methodologies are very similar. They've taken the same terms and they have just rebranded them into an acronym. VANT, MEDDIC, NEAT, I'm going to put SPIN aside because that's kind of an execution framework. But mostly speaking, methodologies, generally speaking, are addressing the same types of things. They're how do I get a buyer to open up about their pain, and how do I get to know the why behind it so that I believe that I have more information in the room. So the only thing that I would say, you've got acronym methodologies, then you've got premise and motion methodologies like Challenger. And the entire methodology is based on you should challenge someone, or value-based selling. The entire, concept is you should be selling based on value, or solution-centric selling. The entire, premise is based on I should be like presenting a solution to a problem. Or then you have customer-centric selling, which the entire premise is I should focus on the customer. And even if those were complete in and of itself, which every single time that I've entered a methodology, I've come to the conclusion of like, they don't give you a framework how to do it. Like, how do I add value? What does value mean? When you say focus on the customer, what should I actually focus on? But more importantly, they don't tell you why. Like, why should I add value? What will that do to my customer, and how will it be to their benefit? So I'm going to put most methodologies, I would break them down into one of three categories. An acronym methodology, where they're just all rebranding the same shit. A motion methodology of they're anchoring on one type of premise, or you have your brand name methodologies that are like Schmandler selling, for instance. So I protect my ass on this podcast, but it's like, okay, the entire sales world according to this person. And what I was always left behind with is two things before I came across gap selling. The first thing was I never believed that it was to the benefit of my buyer, all of these methodologies. I think people can still feel it in the room. They're like, I'm trying to get this person to open up in a certain way, or I'm trying to get this person to talk about their pain so they feel like they should buy more, or I'm trying to challenge this person, which, by the way, from a psychology perspective, will not work. Will not work. But whatever, put it aside. I want to challenge this person so that I strong arm them into believing that they should buy more because they didn't know the size of the problem. But until I came across Gap, I didn't ever see a methodology that helped me understand how can I truly add value to my buyer by understanding something that they didn't know beforehand. Now, Challenger was the closest. Spin was just an execution format of like, okay, how do I ask different questions? And I'm like, again, but to do what? So I think the first thing that was really bereft of is, why am I doing what I'm doing? And how do I genuinely all the time have my buyers back, not just by adding value by sending over content or being all about them or empathetic based selling, but how do I always have their back by diagnosing things that they don't know? That's the only role of a seller, and that's the only role of a doctor, because that's the only expertise that you can possess, I believe, that makes your intention and your agenda clean within the sales floor. I've said a lot. I've spoken for, I think, 4 minutes. So Keenan, I'm gonna be quiet for now.
5 to be exact.
Hey, Keenan, what are your thoughts?
So the question is, are all sales methodologies pretty much the same?
Yes, all sales methodologies basically cover the same things.
Cover the same thing. Okay, so here's the deal, right? I'm just going to go on the record right now. Clearly, I'm biased. I wrote gap selling. I wrote gap selling because, yes, Becc.
No, keep going. I'm going to turn one of the lights on. It's getting dark in here. Go ahead.
So clearly, I'm somewhat biased. But what I think people need to understand is here's this. On the surface, most sales methodologies can feel the same, use similar words, use similar phrases, labels, etc. Okay? Here's the difference. Okay? Hope Becc can hear this.
I can.
Almost all sales methodologies out there today, I'm going to say all, with the exception of gap selling, it's why I wrote it, are focused around the transaction. Okay? Their entire process, the words they use, the labels, even they say we're doing discovery, or they talk about mirroring, or they talk about finding the pain, or they talk about the why, all of that stuff. Oh, it's the same as gap selling, or it's the same, it's this and that. They're all similarly the same. No, because here's the difference. They're taking all of that stuff, and to Beck's point, and she said they don't say why, I actually think they do. They're trying to teach you how to manage the transaction.
The conversation, you mean?
I'm sorry?
You mean the conversation?
No, the transaction. All of the stuff they're teaching you is how to drive the transaction of the sale. How do I get the buyer to say yes to my product or service? How do I maximize or increase the probability of moving the transaction in my way? So they see it as a transaction. What they miss, and why gap selling is different, is gap selling is not based on the transaction. It is based on change management. That's the big difference. It is based on change management. Gap selling spends the whole time of giving you all of these things. It says, how do you help the customer change? The transaction is just the output of a proper change management process. and change. Therefore, the benefit of change management is driven by the outcome of the buyer, not the outcome of the seller. You talk about Sandler, you talk about spin, you talk about solutions. It all comes down to how do you as a salesperson sell more? How do you as a salesperson get that transaction to go your way? What we say is we're not worried about the transaction. If you properly drive the appropriate change management for the appropriate motives, for the appropriate outcomes, the transaction happens by default. That's the difference. So yes, they all the other ones are the same. Again, I said it, asterisk, I'm biased, but I will go toe to toe with anybody on this. I will go toe to toe. Example, mirroring. Mirroring does nothing to help the buyer change. Right? What do you call that? The transaction plan, whatever that damn thing's called. What's that called? The mutual action plan. Does nothing to help the buyer make a change decision. It helps them with the process of getting the transaction completed. I'll agree with that.
Not
right?
and
I'm not necessarily opposed to a mutual action plan, but inside of gap selling, that is not a core tenet because that comes so later. That comes after the client determines, I need to change, why I need to change, how we help you get to the decision of why change matters to you, what happens if you didn't change, all of that. Very few programs use that process from a change management perspective. They use it a transaction perspective, and that is not the way to sell.
And something to tack on is they're all very technique heavy.
Yes.
Very, very technique heavy. I'll give you an example. Speaking of influencers, I saw an influencer who talks a lot about cost of inaction all the time, make a post and be like, hey, so once you calculate the cost of inaction for them, you should remind them of it later. And I'm like, actually, if you read the first book that talks about cost of inaction, which is Challenger, and then the second book of the Jolt Effect goes into that most deals are actually lost to indecision, not status quo, and that reminding them of the cost of inaction will actually deter them from buying because they're like, this isn't helping me understand anything that I didn't know. It's just rebroadcasting to me that you have no additional expertise and you're just trying to push me to close through a technique.
I know I'm hired to do this.
You said otherwise I'm going to go too far.
So Andrew Ortiz said here, interesting, don't they run parallel? And I'm not sure what the they run parallel is, but what I'm going to say is this. No, because in those other ones, at no point in time is there any discussion around the discovery of, you know what, you shouldn't change. After doing this, it doesn't make sense to change. Or two, hey, you know what, based on what I've heard, I'm not the person to help you change. I haven't seen that in any sales book I've ever read where they drove you to the conclusion, if you can't help, here's how you steer them the other direction. They actually try to do other things to move them towards you, even if it's not a good fit. In a lot of cases, they don't even address if it's a good fit because they don't care if it's not a good fit. All they care about is how does the salesperson get the transaction in their favor. They're completely different, even though they may sound nuanced.
So I will add one thing, so I think this is important, and then I promise, I won't go on.
Go ahead.
And I do have a hard stop at one. So
I believe there are nuances between them, meaning like a name-based versus an action-based like Challenger versus a acronym-based like NEAT, for instance, or SNAP. But they're all the same in that they all felt the same when I was executing them. And they were all after like the same types of goal. Now, I will have to say, when I first came across GAP, I'm like, yeah, I get it. Future state, current state.
Yeah,
yeah.
You did. You almost poo-pooed it. Like, yeah.
Well, you know, that's me. That's the charm of me.
Yeah.
But I will say it is the only one that it feels different when you're executing it. Because to be able to execute it, you have to understand and have an expertise in your buyer. And that was the first time that that was required of me to be able to do it. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. So you've got all these methodologies that are trying to do something to the buyer versus Gap, I'm trying to diagnose for the buyer.
With the buyer.
Yeah. I'd say like even if they don't understand though, that what they just said means that there's a completely separate diagnosis. It's not even with them because they don't even understand what's going on, but it is still for and in support and in advocacy of the buyer. And that was the first methodology that I had even seen that door been open, that I'm like, I don't just have to master 2 or 3 techniques and like, get my check mark and it can keep going. It was the first time that I really felt like this is an advocacy for my buyer and it's to support my buyer. But I will say between each other, I do think there are 3 categories: name-based, action-based, and then acronym-based. But they're all in the same, and that they're all trying to manipulate the buyer in some way, or to like strong arm them, or like, to various degrees. We've seen an evolution. But
to win the transaction.
Yeah.
The goal is the transaction. The goal is to win the transaction. And right here, Scott Cronin. Oh, sorry. Scott Cronin is a winner here. He keeps showing up. Way to go, Scott. Scott said, when it comes to Sandler, I'm about building rapport. Scott, here's a perfect example of what you were saying before, Becc, right? Now watch this. Everybody used that word rapport, right? And that's one of those that sits over it. I don't use the word rapport for a reason. I don't need to build rapport. Most people go in and think the first step is to connect with the buyer in some way. Yeah. On some it's superficial, some it's not superficial, but the point is they think I got to build rapport. Let's look at how I talk. Look at how I just fuck rapport. You know how I build rapport? In the first fucking 3 questions I asked that buyer, and their eyes are like, whoa. Great question. Never looked at my business that way. Never considered this. That's an interesting approach. Then rapport built. Drop fucking mic. I don't look at building rapport as a step in the process. My job is to establish myself as a credible resource that understands their business as well, or if not better than they do, in the area of which I create products and services. Then I have rapport. So this is a perfect example. People see rapport as a way to get them to like you, to get them to talk to you. And so that is a fucking tactic. Let that shit fucking go. Let it go. So that's a perfect example. That is about the transaction. That is not about the change.
I have 2 things for you. First of all, Keenan, when I take a step back, I will say you must learn how to form an opinion. Number 2 is rapport is actually a French term.
Yes, it is. Rapport.
And it means to be brought back.
Uh-huh.
So what it actually means in its core definition is not complimenting the buyer. It means that the buyer's goal is to solve problems.
Yes.
And you're bringing yourself back across the opposite end of the table where you're trying to close them to their own side, and you're joined in trying to solve their problems too. So to your point, people are after building rapport by being like, nice boat picture. Yeah. Hey, my kids go to that school too. Yeah. Or, go Huskies or whatever it is. But you can build rapport. The only way to build rapport is to be restored to their side. So I get the feeling, I don't know, I haven't been on your discovery calls, but I would get the feeling by your first 3 questions that I'm under the assumption and the awareness that like you're trying to solve my problems because none of your questions are leading. That could be solving my problems by challenging, like understanding a misdiagnosis. That could be building rapport by understanding a problem exists that I don't even know that I have. But in either case scenario, I don't think it's that rapport is dead. I think people are misdefining it. They think it's like, the reason they think it's the beginning of the stage, Keenan, is because they believe that it's just complimenting the buyer to get them to open up. That's why they think that they should do it only at the beginning.
Yeah. So here, and then we'll move on. But this is what Sandler says from their site: tips for building rapport. Understand yourself, your communication style, and the value you provide. You don't know the value you provide. You spend 10 minutes talking to the customer, right? create an atmosphere of equal business stature. How the fuck do you create an atmosphere of equal business stature? I don't even know what the fuck that means, right?
It actually should be unequal, that you have more expertise than they have.
Yes, yes. Be honest and transparent. The mere fact that that is even stated as rapport is be honest and transparent is beyond my comprehension. That is what's called the duh. If you don't have that coming in, should be taking a training class to figure out that's what you got to do. And the last one is remain present. This is what I'm talking about. That is part of the 4 steps of building rapport. Nowhere does it say anything about understanding the business challenges your buyer has. Nowhere does it say anything about asking credible questions that allow you to diagnose and learn from you. It talks about none of that. And my boy Scott says here, I build rapport by meeting them where they are and where they live and knowing their persona and knowing what they face. Okay, that's great, but that is not Sandler rapport.
So totally. Well, another big one, Keenan, that I'd like to hear your comments on.
Yeah, while way off track today. Whoa, sorry, man.
On this raid.
All good.
There's a very famous, like that is to me even better than what I'm seeing in the market today. Today, I'm seeing the feel heavy market of make them feel a certain way, make them feel like they can open up. So a great example of this is, let's call it Shriss Schross, that wrote a book, Shover Schlitz.
This cross.
And you go to his website, Shriss Schross website. I mean, very well known.
I've never heard of him, but anyways.
No.
The Slack Bond. The Slack Bond group.
Really not that we're talking about, Keenan.
Okay, keep going.
So, okay. There's a book written by a FBI negotiator. Let's say that.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
And I'm always covering my ass from a legal perspective. And you go to the website, and it's all about, from front to end, how to make the buyer feel like they can open up to you.
Yeah.
Or feel like you're not trying to challenge their objection, or feel like you're on their same side. You go front to end. I spent an hour and a half studying that website. There is nothing about expertise and diagnosis of like, okay, let's say you do get them to open up. What then?
Yeah.
What's the goal? And you could argue, oh, well, we had that in mind. And I'm like, well, then why is it not on your website?
Mm-hmm.
You are just manipulating from front to end.
Yes, manipulation.
Buyer to where they feel heard, or they feel like you bond with them, so that they open up. So it increases the close rates because they feel like you're on their side. But I'm like, if you aren't truly out for their best interest,
there's no authenticity.
It's the worst one. Because like the problem I have with it, and the people that advocate for it as influencers, is I'm like, it might work. It might work. And you spent all your calories trying to make them feel in a certain way with zero freaking focus.
Yeah.
And how do I actually help them as a business owner? The fact that we have not even come across the idea of like, well, maybe I should know their metrics. Or maybe I should know like industry statistics about them. Maybe I should know something about that buyer, that we have never even scratched really the surface of that is a huge flag to me, that I'm like, this whole thing, it was born from a place of sleazy and I'm trying to close you. And it has just morphed forms, but it stayed like.
It's just lipstick on a pig.
Totally. But I'm like, it's more and more and more tricky, sleazy techniques of like
lipstick, now eyeliner, some blush. Like that pig is full on.
How do I calculate the cost of action so that I can make you feel like you should buy more without any kind of focus on how do I diagnose things that they don't know? Like if you don't have that in your bag, then I'm like, you are the perpetuation and the reason of why salespeople, I'm like, those buyers, they're freaking smart for shutting down. Yeah. That's why they don't want to give you pain. I'm like, I back it.
Yep. 100%.
Just bizarre to me. And I like Keenan, I mean this, and then we can go on. I have studied every one of their websites, and I mean freaking every single last one. You can direct message me and ask me, and I guarantee you that if you are in sales training, I've spent at least an hour on your website. By the way, about 75% of you don't have the right copyrights up. You're like 2020, 2021 on an FYI side note. Point being, I'm pouring through, begging these sales, hoping that these sales trainers are after the right thing. I want them to be for our community's sake. But I'm like, I cannot find it. And I'm like, tell me why Gap was the first time. And I mean it, the first time. And like, honestly, I confused Gap for the rest of them because you were using kind of similar words. And I was like, oh, this is just like I'm like, what brand do I have to, like, what form of French do I have to learn now? But it was all the same thing.
I remember it vividly. I remember the conversation we had. I walked you through it, and I remember vividly her reaction. I'm like, she thinks it's like the rest. And then I watched her on a sales call, and I was like, she's not doing it. She thinks she knows it. She's not doing it. I literally sat on a sales call with you and told you, I was like, hey, you missed this. You don't remember that? Or if I didn't sit on the call, you told me how a call went, one of the two. Yeah. And I was like, what about this? And what about that? And you're like, And I'm like, you didn't. And I remembered she did not see it until about 6 months later as she kept digging and digging. And I remember she called me, like, I get it now. And I'm like, if it took her 6 months, man, we're fucked.
No, it's too longer than that. But I'm like, point being, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. This is not a commercial for Gap Selling, but that was the question. And they're all the same except Gap Selling. And the reason they're the same is they're all focused on the transaction. Gap Selling is focused on change management and sales. This is the big difference. True sales, true buying. Let me go that way. True buying is managing change management. We're here. We need to make an investment. We think we need to make an investment to get over here. Is that the right place to change? Are these the right tools? Are these the right processes? What happens if we don't, et cetera? That's all change management. That is not a transaction.
They're not all the same, but they are all whiskey. Some of them are bourbons. Some
Okay. And with that, we are going on to the next segment of this podcast, which is
Take it or leave it.
This is the segment where I introduce common sales tactics, and Keenan and Becc let us know whether they would take it or leave it.
I love this segment.
Hell yeah.
All right, everybody, those of you who are watching, invite a friend. Let's see if we can break a record here. Invite a friend, tag somebody that needs to be watching this.
There we go. Well, the first take it or leave it for today, which will go to Keenan, is no commission sales. Keenan, take it or leave it.
Leave it. Leave it.
Why so?
Leave it. Okay. Whew. I'm gonna show my age here. I believe. I gotta do this quick. Okay. I believe that when people are paid more to perform, it brings out the best of people, or it gets the best people. It's incentive. And sales is all about being able, it's very measurable, and it's about being able to get people to push the envelope, to think outside of the box, and to drive to make more money. And if they don't, then the company doesn't suffer. If you have non-commissioned salespeople, these salespeople are still going to come at you and say, I need to make $250,000 a year. Organizations cannot afford to have a sales team making $250 every single person, and 20% of those people not selling enough, but not selling not enough to fire them, but not enough to cover their costs and not enough to make it profitable. That makes no sense to me. I don't need a staff of 10, 50, 100, 5,000 people. They're all making a set amount regardless of how they perform. If I had my druthers and it was easy to do, I'd have the entire fucking world on some level of commission, so that people don't get comfortable, just sit down and think, well, that kind of sucked, but I get my paycheck tomorrow anyways.
Becc, what about you? Take it or leave it?
Leave it. The only thing I'll add is I agree everything with Keenan. I'm like, that's what makes it good. Like, it's so accountable. It's like, that's why, like, track versus figure skating. It's non-subjective. It's just like, did you like, that's the sex appeal of it. If it's like that, it's a number. Can you hit it? Like, stop talking. Can you hit it or can you not hit it? And did your ideas actually work? It's one of the only professions that you are.
And here's another way of looking at it too. And I'll be honest right now. This is my personality. Because when I used to wait tables and they wanted to share tips across everybody, I was fucking irate. No. I always make more tips than all of you. Like, I always make more tips than all of you because I'm good at it. I raise the average price to the ticket, and now I'm going to lose money. No way. And so the same thing would happen in business. If everybody's getting paid roughly the same amount, but every year in and a year out, I bring in 20, 30, 40, 50% more than everybody else. How long do you think I'm going to be happy?
Mm-hmm.
Hell no. It's like, wait a minute. What am I doing? So either I'm like, fuck, this is not worth it to me anymore, or I'm going to quit, right? But I'm not going to do is keep bringing in 30, 40% more than everybody and get paid the same. That ain't happening.
That's how those people are geared. So I'm like, you have to leave that in place. Like, that's half of the fun.
Yeah.
All right. The next one for today is sales leaderboards. Becc, take it or leave it.
Take it. Love it. As a former shit talker, I loved it.
Former?
Oh yeah, I'd walk right over to the desk and be like, "Hey, can you read that for me real quick?" So when you go home tonight and you're reading I want you to read these numbers to your kids tonight for a bedtime story. I love it. I think it's motivating. Put on the bright lights. I'm gonna take it.
All right. What about you, Keenan? Take it or leave it.
100% take it. 100% take it. Not only do I 100% take it, just like commission, I think we need leaderboards more in life. I don't know what's going on and I don't know how it's happened, but more and more people feel that highlighting someone's position, their success or failure, is disrespectful. I don't get that. Like, I do not understand why we're not allowed to basically put a light on you. Your job is to do something. And because we put a light on you when you're not doing your job, we are now somehow not being PC, or we're hurting you, or being disrespectful. Wait, stop. Makes no sense. Everybody should have a light. Everybody.
I'm thinking about what if Keenan and I were on a board together?
Please put in the comments, who do you think would be at the top of that leaderboard?
Keenan.
I don't know. I think it goes back and forth.
Keenan, I would do everything in my power to make sure you never made it on time.
I know. That's what I love about you. And the funny part is to think that you would think I would be okay with that and just accept it.
I know you would. That's what I'm saying. I think someone would actually get hurt. Like, physically. The games would get dirty. They would get real dirty.
Okay, with that, we're going on to the next segment of this podcast, my personal favorite segment, which is
the inbox.
I love how Keenan's just like, the inbox.
I will say, Keenan, now that these are later at night, I'm getting more chill, kind of like you, that I'm getting more loose.
You think I'm chill? That is not an adjective thrown my way.
Vocabulary. I'll actually say what I'm thinking.
Wow.
So what you need to do is bring a little fucking glass of French wine. Ooh la la. Right? Oh, you don't drink? God, I keep forgetting. You don't drink.
I don't need the wine. I don't need the wine to throw gas on that fire.
True.
Well, this is the segment where Keenan and Becc answer questions from our audience. And for that, we have the help of our trusty mailbox. Now, let's see who the first person to
Eat that mailbox.
talk to us today. This person, his name is John Sullivan. Sounds like a fake name because this person
from Boston, good Irishman.
This person's from a redacted location, unknown.
Mint freeze.
I got put in the worst territory at my company. I underachieved and got fired. I know you two are the best at sales, and I'm always going to be learning and improving, but I also feel shitty on getting fired. Any tips on how I can get back on the horse and crush my next role. Becc, what do you think about this?
You cut out for a little while. Did he cut out for you too, Keenan, or just me?
Just
Okay. So basically the guy got canned. And
Dude
then,
got canned. He wants to know how he could get back on the horse and crush his next role.
Okay, hold on. The key piece that you missed, I think, though, is he got fired and he's blaming the territory he was given.
Yeah.
oh,
That's a very important piece of this conversation.
yeah. I'd say so if I'm gonna go first, yeah.
Doug King's funny. He said, "You took the job, idiot."
So I think being accountable to your results is the fastest way to do it. So if you're saying, sorry, John, if you're saying things like territory or, it was the refs or lawyer screwed me, then like it's you. It's you to a large degree. It's your mindset. So I would be after two things, in my opinion, that I'm going to pass to Keenan, oddly enough. Number one, taking accountability for everything in your life as much as you can. Your failures, your success, most importantly, your success. When you see a number, don't be like, oh, well, I tried what my manager said and it didn't work. It's like, so then try something else. Just start doing activities as much as you can to the best of your ability and finding a way to make it happen. So I'd say the accountability is half of it. The other half of it is just go start. If you were to, I know Keenan says that someone was going to get
Killed.
killed in your life if you didn't hit that quota. And I know it's a grave example, but it's if you aren't viewing it like that, then you aren't living a life that you could, and you're going to get fired and fired and fired again. But best case scenario, you'll stay at an org, but people won't have an inherent deep down respect for you because you're not producing as much as the other people. And so the other people have two elements. There's acumen. Yeah, point blank acumen. Some of it's drive, but some of it's just accountability of how do I make this happen? So I would start with why you formulated the question the way that you did. And why did you mention that territory and work your way out there from there? Keenan, what do you think of this?
That gave me less than a minute. I think she's trying to get me burnt. So look, here's the deal. Take complete ownership. So if it was correct that it was the wrong territory, the minute you had recognized that, you should have gone to your boss and said, listen, this is why this territory is not real. Here are the numbers. Here's what you're asking me to get. Here's the evidence, blah, blah, blah. Walk them through it. And if the boss still doesn't believe you or doesn't get on board, you say, I appreciate it. I'm gracefully quitting because I do not believe I can be successful. So don't put yourself in the position of being a victim. If it was truly the territory and you knew it, you should have left if you couldn't change it. But instead, you took the victim mentality, stayed there, and then said, oh, they fired me because I couldn't hit it.
Well, here, I have a point.
You have 5 seconds. You have 5 seconds.
I'm not gonna. Harris Becc is street smart. But I'm he didn't say that everyone was ripped. He said he was fired.
Because he got the worst territory.
I don't believe that, though, is what I'm saying. I don't think that they were just okay, you get South Dakota and everyone else gets these big.
But Becc, that's not my point. I'm not going to go into this and say he's right or say he's wrong. I'm going to give advice on the assumption that he is right under those circumstances. So within that framework, if that is true, the way you handle it is you take control. You say, oh, this territory will not support the number. Here's the data. Here's why. Here's my record. This is what I will do for you. And if they still say no, go fucking get it. Then you say, you know what? I'm sorry, I can't be successful here. So I am going to move on. Thank you for the opportunity, but I do not believe I'm set up for success. That's how you take control and own your shit. Yeah. But instead, when he moped and griped and said, I can't do it and I can't make it, and they fired his ass, and no, he simply put himself into victim mode.
I don't believe it would occur. That's why but you're right.
Yeah,
You're
but
right.
I've learned, look, you may be right, but I've learned over the days, very rarely do I take the position of, I don't believe that could occur, because the shit I've seen in the business world, the shit I've seen in the personal world, anything is fucking possible.
I've never seen an AE be handed a disproportionately terrible territory without cause, meaning usually it's triggered by something.
Okay, I have, because the leadership believed it wasn't. Yes, we must move on because I have a hard stop, unfortunately. And really quickly, to some of the people here that are going after this dude, I agree with you on the premise, but I want to speak in terms of social media. People, stop going after people when you don't know the whole story.
Mhm.
When you don't know the whole story, don't go after people, because he may be absolutely correct. He may have gotten screwed.
Yeah.
Now, he could have handled it differently, that's for sure. But one person said, well, you shouldn't have taken the job. For all we know, he took the job. It was a different territory, and they changed it. I'm in the middle of it. Right
answer, wrong work. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So everybody, just from a world of social media, step the fuck back. Because if I put your life under a microscope, I could rip you for about 30% of the decisions you made like that. So let's all just step back. We're not all gods. We don't do everything right all the time. We put ourselves in positions we shouldn't have, etc.
What about you? What would you rip me for? Go ahead, man.
I kind of want to hear Keenan's answer to this.
I don't. Keep
going. Okay,
no.
But
Becc actually is pretty good at that stuff. Go.
Okay, well, we are on to the next segment of this podcast, which is
the challenge.
This is the segment where Keenan and Becc break down a challenging subject within the sales industry. And for this one, we are going straight to the South Pole because the challenge for today is how to cold outbound. So, Keenan, why don't you start us off with this one?
Okay. As I've said many times, I'm just really in limbo when it comes to cold. So I have changed cold to AE generated. I don't like cold anymore, cold outbound, called AE generated. And I believe the best way to be AE generated, one, is to be way more maniacal and driven than the average salesperson is today. Too many salespeople are trying to systematize it, and I'm making up a word, robotize it, and just make it this process oriented, and it's all going to fall out. Nope. We need way more creativity. We need way more intensity. We need way more willingness to live on the edge and upset people or challenge people and almost be a nuisance. You got to go right to the edge of being a nuisance, like fuck off. You got to stay in front of them. So in my world, if I'm going to outbound, I am going to, or let me rephrase that. If I'm going to self-generate, I'm going to create content from a long-term perspective that will catch up to me over time. I am going to spend way more time on LinkedIn. I'm going to spend way more time on very targeted accounts that I keep hitting over and over. I think some people used to call that, still call that, what was that called? Something based, account-based marketing, or ABM, I think. I'm going to create my own individual account-based marketing programs. I'm going to try to create some of the most unique and creative one-off emails that blow people's mind. So when I talk about intensity, the amount of work I'm going to have to, no, I'm taking that word off the table, not work. The amount of brain power that I am going to put in my self-generated opportunities is going to be 2 to 3x what anybody else does. It may translate into more work, but what we're not getting enough of now is brain power. Not enough people, reps, BDRs, SDRs are putting the brain power into this to crack the code to get people to respond, to listen, to engage, etc. It's too much activity and too much process, not enough drive, not enough brain power.
Becc, what are your thoughts?
So I'm going to break it down, I hope in basically 2 minutes. And then we
can have the whole 7, Becc.
No, but then we got to go to the rant and you got to go at 1. So I'm going to try and break it down in 2 minutes. There's 5 questions to outbound that you have to answer. We can go cold email first. The first is, do they even get the email? And that's going to be email deliverability, which is a huge one that people don't think enough about. The second question is, do they open the email? The third question is, do they read the email once they open it? The fourth is, are you relevant once they read it? And the fifth is, psychologically, do you take care of them along the way? So the first question of, do they get the email? They're looking for non-human activity. So a couple of tips there are, don't send a lot of emails at once. Don't send more than 50 emails a day. When subject lines are all the same, it's going to hurt you. When you use words like problem, ROI, solution, exclamation points, the more links, the worse. Those are all going to damage email deliverability and as a team collectively. So I would think about, first, do they get it? If they're equidistant, 105, 110, 115, 120, that can hurt you for email deliverability. The second of, do they open it, is, does it look like a non-sales or marketing email? So it's going to be predicated on. So you have to be pattern interruptive in terms of your words. The third, do they read it once they open it? They actually read it. It's going to be predicated on how many non-typical business pattern words do you use. So you're 15 to 17 times more likely to pay attention to something if it breaks the pattern of what a normal email looks like. So words to stay away from are just checking in, just following up, just circling back, just bubbling at the top of your inbox. Hope you're well. Happy Monday. Hope you and your kids are safe during these uncertain times. Looking forward to it. ROI, end-to-end optimization. We help X, blank, do blank. Here are case studies, quick chat, quick intro, quick question. Looking forward to it. Best regards. I'd love to is another one. The more of those words you use, the more dead you are. So there are a lot of different ways that people read emails. Actually, the F-shaped pattern is known to be the most common when it's technically not true. It's the most common if your email is written poorly. So people are judging how they read an email based on, do they trust you? Have they seen you before? And the quality of the email. So the F-shaped pattern is the most normal. They start at, think of the shape of an F. Top of the left-hand corner, top right is 2, middle left is 3, middle right is 4, and then they go down the row. So if you hit any pattern words at the beginning of the first line, end of the first line, beginning of the second line, end of the second line, or down the row, the left-hand column of any of the paragraphs, you're dead. Relevance, which is the fourth question. I think about, are you relevant in terms of to the buyer persona metrics that they're trying to solve for that are most important to them, the problems that they have in relationship to those metrics, business problems and technical problems. And then are you relevant to a trigger that's happened to them or that they've carried out, like downloaded content, etc. You need to orient yourself and anchor yourself there to be relevant once you do. And then psychologically, you take care of them along the way. I'd say the biggest resource I would look into is, I'm going to name 5 and then I'm going to shut up. Transactional Analysis by Eric Byrne. He talks a lot about ego state. So like not commanding someone. Because if I say, do not push this button, you want to push the button. I would look into attachment theory. I would look into interdependence theory. I would look into, social efficacy. Albert Bandura. I would read social aggression theory by him. I would also read the Evolving Self by Robert Keegan. But there is a huge bed of that people will not talk to you just based on the way that you're talking to them. So the biggest recommendation that I would have is when people say they study psychology and sales, I'm like, name the top 3 books that you read. I'm like, I would dig in there and understand how do people react, because it's the last thing I'll say, a personality is defined as a pattern of interactions. So if you think that you're a special snowflake, like it's the same pattern as everyone else. Everyone else thinks that too, but the reality is you're not. So like a personality disorder is just an abnormal pattern, but point being, we all have a pattern. So I'd get to know some of the patterns of how people react in different situations. So you know that I shouldn't say, do not push this button, because then they're going to want to push the button because they went into the wrong ego state. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Am I horning early?
No.
No,
Well, I don't know what I would add. I mean, I really don't know what I add. I think not even theoretic. I think everything that Becc said from theory and practice and all that is real. I think where the sales organizations struggle is in practice, right? Like people just don't understand what a real pattern interrupt is. People don't understand how to connect with somebody. So someone understand, be like, okay, I want to get up to the CEO of this business. I want them to read my email. This is what I'm selling. They don't have no idea how to go out and take all that information and be like, oh, I know how I can get this guy to respond. I know what this guy's going to react to. They have no fucking clue. They literally have no clue. So all I kept hearing as Becc was describing everything that was accurate, and I think this is the big chasm in sales, is I kept thinking of golf. And I kept thinking of when Becc would say, oh, pattern interrupt. And when Becc would say, would list all the things, right? I kept thinking 80% of people who slice it never get below 80, right? Well, great. But no one can figure out how not to slice it. Do you see what I'm saying? And that is the gap people have. So when I go into what I'm going in, I think it's the brain power. People don't put enough brain power into these things, nor do they put the level of intensity that you need to get someone to connect with you. Yeah. That's how I won when I was a rep. I fucking was intense at getting in front of these people. I built this. There was no sequences back in the day. I didn't even realize that's what I was doing. I built these. I'd send something out, put a note, 3 days later, get back to them. If they didn't get back to them, I had another note. Do this. I would keep fucking going. And I'd be constantly thinking in my head, he didn't respond to this. What is she going to respond to now? How do I get her to do that? Until I finally got there.
I would say just study cold email. Like people don't study enough. That's my true feedback to the sales profession is I don't meet enough people who just read about their craft.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you don't think that looking forward to mutual connections ROI would work on you, it probably won't work on your prospect, Brendan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well,
for a 30-second rant, or Keenan, you gotta go.
It's not called a rant anymore.
Oh, sorry. And thanks for giving me a heads up ahead of time. It's really sweet of you.
Well, that's our podcast. Oh,
one last thing. What's
there's
one last
just
thing?
one more thing.
Yes, Becc.
This is the segment of our podcast where Becc and Keenan share with us what's on their mind and give us their closing thoughts. Becc, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I thought Keenan was going to ask me a question. My one last thing is 2 in 1. Turn everything into a system and study the system. If you don't have a system of how you're doing things, I don't know what to say. I think I get weak when I'm in Paris and I just say what I'm thinking. I'm like, you have to turn everything into a system. So then when you win, you don't win on accident and it's not a mistake. So I'm like, it's a big push to people of you need to study what you're doing while you're doing it. Think about how you're doing something, not just about doing it more all the time. I think about 90% of my time is studying system, and it's done me nothing but favors. So that's my one last thing. Study more, turn everything into a system, read a book. If you say you like psychology and you're an influencer, you should have read at least 3 psychology books.
All right, Keenan, what about you? What's your one last thing?
You can tell me how much you miss me.
Yes, I miss Becc terribly. I think my one last thing is this. I think I think each individual person needs to redefine effort. I think it's time to redefine effort. I just don't see enough commitment to the outcomes that we sign up for. Mm-hmm. So, I think you really need to sit down and ask. Effort is not how hard you tried. Like, I worked 6 hours and it didn't work. Effort is the whole concept. Who did I ask? When did I ask for help? What did I read? Self-assess. Have I reviewed what I did and did it work or not work, and why not? What am I doing differently? Right? It's constant assessment. Mm-hmm. Try again, assessment, try again. That's true effort. not just sitting there and doing the same thing over and over, faster and faster and faster and faster, harder and harder and harder, more hours doing the same thing. That's not happening. And secondly, marry the outcome. I don't think many people are attached to the outcome anymore. And they're okay not making it. Marry the outcome.
Well, what if my outcome has something to do with someone else?
Then that's not your outcome. You can't set someone else's outcome. So
No, like, what if my outcome is close one revenue, but I'm a BDR and I wasn't in this selling room? What do I do then? A genuine question.
Yeah, you took it. You took it. Leave the job. This is what we do. This is what we do. We blame people. So all of a sudden, the government came out tomorrow and said 90% of sales training is against the law, or you can only teach this type of sales training, right? Or something like that. I'm not going to keep going and say, oh, the government, and then fail and blame the government. I'm going to step back and say, can I be successful in this new environment? And if I cannot be successful in this new environment, I'm going to go do something else. What I'm not going to do is to own an outcome that's not mine. But the minute you accept that outcome, it is now yours. And don't tell me, oh, well, I couldn't quit because I needed the money. No. That may be why it's hard. But if you stayed, you took the outcome by default or on purpose, and it doesn't matter. You took it, so now it's yours. Fucking deliver or shut the fuck up.
All right, and with that is our podcast.
What's up with these long podcasts, Keenan?
All right.
Von de haut en bas. That's how you say it in French.
100%.
Sales top to bottom.
All right. I got to go. Love you guys. But I'm late. He just sent me a note.
All right. Well,
All right.
that's the end of our podcast. See y'all next week.
Bye.
Peace, y'all.